So in the last episode of this podcast, I did something around why every moment is an election about you. And it's an idea, basically, you can go back and listen to that and find it and have a listen, but it's essentially about that sense that every decision we make and every action we take, we're casting a vote for the person that we want to become. And so different versions of ourselves are the candidates. You know, the candidate that achieves our potential or the candidate that doesn't. The candidate where, we might want to become fit, or then there's another candidate that is an unfit version of ourselves. And so there's actions that we take which will push us towards one or the other. And so I was asked after that podcast was released, okay, you might know which candidate to vote for, and you might know which action is the vote for that candidate. But what about, even though you know your highest good, even though you know what would be best for you in that moment, you actually vote for the other candidate anyway. So even though you know you'll kind of eat the junk food anyway, or you'll miss work anyway, or you'll have that fight anyway, what is it that one can do if you know who you want to vote for, you know the person that you want to become, you even know what you need to do to cast that vote in favour of that person that you want to become, but you don't. You cast the opposite vote instead. You eat the junk food anyway, you miss work anyway, you have the fight anyway, or whatever it happens to be for you. What then? So there's a couple of ideas, and probably each of them would make an episode on their own, but I wanted to answer that question. And I suppose the first thing I would do would be to invite you to ask yourself an important question first, and that is, when have I voted? When have I taken the action that I actually want to take? When have I seen who I want to become? And when have I recognised what would be the action that votes for that version of myself, to become that version of myself in the future, and actually taken that action? When are the times, think back to a time where you've actually done that. So the time, for instance, where you wanted to go jogging and you actually did. Or the time where you felt lousy but you went to work anyway. Or the time where you didn't really want to have the fight, although part of you did, and yet you managed to refrain from doing that this particular time. Think of those times where you've known what the highest good is and you've done it anyway. Because in those times there's going to be a huge clue as to how you in particular are able to ensure that you cast your vote for your own highest good to become the person that you want to become. Because you have done, and you'll have done it many times. Even if when you look at the pattern of things, you think that more often than not, you're not voting for the thing that you know is the highest good, that you're not voting for the person that you want to become, but for the alternative. Even if that is the pattern that you notice too the alternatives, because in any election there's the candidate that gets the most votes, but it's never unanimous, is it? There's always a candidate who doesn't get the most votes, but they do get votes. And it's the same with you. You might notice a pattern where you're eating the junk anyway, but I would be curious about those times when you voted not to eat the junk anyway, where you ate something else instead, where you had something that was more in tune with the thing that you recognised to be your highest good, where you didn't have the fight anyway, but you refrained and did something different instead. So even if your pattern, or even if you're in a place at the moment where you recognize your highest good, but find yourself voting for the alternative, my first port of call is to invite you to think of all those times where you might have felt exactly the same as this, but somehow you did actually vote in the way that you want to vote. You did actually take an action which was essentially casting a vote in favour of the person that you want to become. You not only recognised what your highest good was, but you took that action even though you feel like this. Now think of that time and connect with that time, and that'll give you a lot of clues as to how it is that you actually did that. Now, there's a whole host of other ideas that I could share with you, and I think I'll save those for another podcast episode because this could be a real long one. But starting there is a good idea, and it's a good idea simply because, well, do you know when somebody offers you advice and you might be in a bit of a struggle and somebody says, oh, here's what you should do. You really need to do this. And you hear the advice and you're like, that doesn't fit me at all. And sometimes this is the problem with advice, you know. It doesn't fit you at all. It might have worked for them, but it's not going to work for you because you're not them, you're a different person. But the wonderful thing about checking in with this question, when have I actually done it before? Knowing that you will have done and connecting with that, what you'll end up doing is having some advice that you can give yourself that not only fits, but has been proven to work for you. So rather than this advice that's kind of off the shelf, that is kind of clothing that fits other people, you'll be able to come up with something tailor-made that you know has already worked before for you. So as I say, there's lots of ways I could answer this question, but perhaps the best place to start is, when have you felt like this? Where you've not really felt like casting the vote in your own favour? Where you know what it is that you need to be doing to become the person that you want to be, and yet you did it anyway, even if it was only to some extent, even if it was a small step. Because even the person who doesn't win an election gets plenty of votes. And so you will have voted plenty of times too for the thing that you recognise actually is your highest good. So my invite to you is connect to that, have a think when that was, and dig into how you did it, because it's proven to work for you. And so if you've already proven that it works for you in this kind of situation that you're in right now, the chances are it's very, very likely that it's going to work again. So I hope that's helpful, and if it is, please share it along. You can also find all of these podcasts in video format on YouTube. Simply go to asliceoftherapy.com and you can subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and you can work with me directly. I'm Alun Parry, the director of the Liverpool Psychotherapy practice, and you can find me on liverpoolpsychotherapy.co.uk. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you tomorrow.